The shuttle was already breaking apart when I opened my eyes. Sparks flew past my face. Smoke filled the cabin. Someone was screaming in a language my translator could not catch fast enough. My name is Deadliest of the Third House, and I am writing this so the Coalition Academy will know exactly what happened and exactly who saved us. We were supposed to be going to a training world, a safe one, a garden tier with soft hills and warm rain. The pamphlet had pictures of green ferns and clean rivers. I had read it 12 times on the trip out. I had practiced my survival drills. I had memorized the local plant life. I was ready for a soft world. I was ready for a test I could pass. What I was not ready for was the pilot screaming that the coordinates were wrong. The numbers had been switched, 2 digits in the wrong order, a single mistake by a tired clerk somewhere in the deep offices of the academy. And because of that one mistake, our shuttle was no longer falling toward a garden world. Our shuttle was falling toward Caressa 9, the deadliest classified planet in the Coalition records, a world so dangerous that every survey drone sent to map it had been destroyed before reaching the surface. We learned this at 6,000 meters. We screamed about it at 4,000. At 2,000, something with wings the size of our entire shuttle came out of the clouds and tore the side of the ship open like wet paper. The pilot grabbed the only escape pod. He did not even look at us. He was apologizing the whole time he ran, but he ran anyway, and the pod fired before half of us understood what he had done. 50 cadets, 22 different species, one broken shuttle falling sideways through poison clouds toward a planet that had never let anything leave alive. I remember the impact only as a sound, not a feeling. The feeling came later when I tried to move and discovered my left arm did not want to. The sound was like the universe slamming a door. When I crawled out of the wreckage, I crawled into a clearing of black grass. The grass was made of glass. It hissed where our blood touched it. The air smelled of metal and something sweet and rotten underneath. My translator chip was buzzing because it could not identify any of the bird sounds, or the wind sounds, or the deep slow sounds coming from somewhere far away under the ground. Around me, the others were beginning to come out. The Threx twins, both bleeding from their middle eyes. Cadet Azul, our group commander, holding his side and trying to look in charge. Little Pim, the youngest of us, only 12 cycles old, crying through 3 of her 4 small mouths. The Viren brothers, the 2 Koresh girls, the big quiet cadet from the gravity worlds whose name I had never learned because he never spoke. And then I saw her. The human girl. I had almost forgotten she was in our class. Humans were new to the Coalition. They were quiet. They were rare. They were always placed in observer roles because the Academy considered their species too fragile for real frontline work. Her name was Hannibal. She was thin, with short dark hair and brown skin, and in 2 full terms of class she had spoken maybe 10 times. She sat in the back. She took notes. She watched everything and said nothing. She was sitting on the broken nose of the shuttle. She was tying her boots. Tying them like we were on a hiking trip. She finished one boot. She finished the other. She stood up. She looked at the dark line of trees at the edge of the clearing, and her face did something very still, not afraid, not angry, just still, the way a body of water gets still right before something rises out of it. And then, very calmly, she reached up and adjusted her collar. That is the moment I want you to remember. Out of everything I am going to tell you, I want you to remember that small movement. A human girl on a planet that should have already killed her, fixing the collar of her uniform like she was about to walk into a meeting room. She turned to all of us. Her voice was flat and clear and not loud, but everyone heard her. Even Pim stopped crying. She said, "Get behind the shuttle. Now, quietly. The thing in the trees is hunting us by feeling the ground move, not by sight. Walk soft. Do not run. Do not speak. Move." Azul opened his mouth to argue. He outranked her. He was supposed to be in charge. He was a cadet commander and she was just a human observer, and the chain of command was very clear. She did not look at him. She said, "Behind the shuttle, cadet. You can report me later if we live." There was something in her voice that made the argument die in his throat. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was something I had never heard before in any language. It was the sound of someone who had already decided she was going to live, and had decided she was bringing the rest of us with her, and was a little bit annoyed that she had to explain this twice. We moved behind the shuttle. The thing came out of the trees a few seconds later. I will try to describe it, but I am still not sure my words are right. It had 6 legs. It had no eyes that I could see, only deep pits along its head where heat would find it. Its mouth was wrong in a way I cannot put into words. It was the size of a cargo loader. It walked across the clearing without making any sound at all, even though its feet were the size of dinner tables. It went to the wreckage. It sniffed. It listened. It tasted the air with a tongue that came out of a place a tongue should not be. Hannibal was crouched at the corner of the shuttle, watching it. In her hand, she had a piece of metal, just a piece. A long, sharp shard she had pulled from the wreckage with her bare fingers. I had seen her do it. She had reached into the broken hull and pulled the shard out, and her hand had bled, and she had not made a sound. The thing came around the side of the shuttle. She moved before any of us understood she was moving. She came up under its jaw, where the soft place was, and she put the shard of metal in deep, and she rolled away before it could close on her. She did this in maybe 2 seconds, maybe less. The thing made a sound that I will hear in my dreams for the rest of my life, and it stumbled, and its legs folded the wrong way, and it fell. The clearing was quiet again. She walked back to us. She was wiping the metal shard clean on the side of her uniform. She was breathing a little faster, but only a little. She knelt down in front of Pim, who was shaking so hard the small one looked like she might break. Hannah said, Hey, kiddo, look at me. You are safe. The big one is finished. You are safe right now. Breathe with me. Slow, slow, good. Pim breathed with her. 3 of her 4 mouths matched the rhythm. Hannah stood up. She looked at the rest of us. We were 47 now, not 50. 3 cadets had not made it out of the shuttle. We had not even had time to count yet. Hannah looked at all of us. She said, Okay, listen to me. I'm going to tell you the rules. There are not many. We can talk about every other thing later. Right now, the rules are these. Rule 1, nobody else is going to die today. We can argue about tomorrow. Rule 2, you do what I tell you when I tell you the first time I tell you. If you have a question, you ask it after we are not being hunted. Rule 3, the youngest among us stays in the middle of the group at all times. Pim, that means you. You stay with me. Pim nodded. Oswald stepped forward. He was still holding his side. He said, with respect, Cadet, I am the senior officer here. The chain of command requires. Hannah turned to him. She was not unkind. She was just tired and very fast. She said, Oswald, I have read your file. You are good at logistics. You are good at supplies. You are excellent at administrative coordination. You are not trained for ground combat on a hostile world. I am. So here is what we are going to do. You are going to handle our supply count and our rationing. That is your zone. I am going to handle keeping us alive until rescue arrives. That is mine. When we get back to the academy, you can write me up for anything you want. I will sign it myself. Right now, please go check the supply lockers and tell me what we have. Oswald stared at her, then he nodded. He went to check the lockers. She turned back to me. I had not realized she even knew my name. She said, Viles, you take notes in class. I have seen you. You are going to take notes for me out here too. Everything I do, everything that happens, every plant we touch, every animal we see, you write it down. If I do not make it, the next person to come here needs to know what we learned. Can you do that? I nodded. I could not have spoken if I had wanted to. She gave me a small, thin smile. It did not really reach her eyes, but it was a smile. She said, Good. Then we have a writer, a quartermaster, and me. That is a start. She looked up at the sky. The 2 suns of Caressa 9 were already starting to set, in opposite directions, the way they do here. The light was turning orange on one side and purple on the other. She said, We have maybe 4 hours of light left. We need shelter, water that does not burn us, and a fire small enough that nothing finds it. Move. We moved. I want to tell you what I learned that first afternoon. I want to tell you because it changed the way I think about my own species, about every species, about the whole shape of the galaxy as I had been taught it. I had been taught that humans were a young species, a soft species, a garden species only recently joined to the coalition, still finding its place. Their homeworld was Tier 2, a mild planet, stable weather, rich soil. The Academy listed them as suitable for observer roles only. But the human girl on the broken nose of the shuttle had not looked soft. She had looked like something old, older than her age, older than her species should have been allowed to look. When she had stepped between us and the thing from the trees, she had not looked surprised. She had not looked frightened. She had looked, and I want you to understand this exactly, she had looked like she had been waiting for it. By the time the first sun set, we had built a small camp behind a wall of broken shuttle plating. Azul had counted our supplies. We had water for 3 days, food for 5, a medical kit, 2 flashlights, and 1 working communicator that could not punch through the planet's strange ionosphere. Hannah had walked the edge of our small camp 3 times, marking the ground with her boot. She had told the Threx twins to watch in opposite directions because they had 4 eyes between them. She had told the Gravity World cadet, whose name turned out to be Garn, to sit close to Pym because Pym was small and cold, and Garn was warm and large and quiet. She did everything quickly. She did everything quietly. She did not raise her voice once. She did not waste a single movement. I sat near her as the dark came down. My arm was wrapped now. Someone had given me a small dose of a pain medicine. I was writing in my notebook, the way she had asked. I looked up at her. She was sharpening another piece of metal. She had pulled 3 more shards from the wreckage. She was sitting cross-legged on the ground, working in the orange and purple light, and her face was very calm and very far away. I asked her, "May I ask you a question, Cadet Bell?" She said, "Hannah, just Hannah, we do not have time for ranks anymore." I said, "Hannah, why are you not afraid?" She did not answer for a long time. The wind moved through the black grass and made a sound like 1,000 small bells. Then she said, "Viles, I'm afraid. I am very afraid. I'm just afraid in a useful direction." I did not understand. I waited. She said, "My homeworld is Tier 2 now, but it was not always. We made it Tier 2. We built the garden. We did not find it. Every single thing about my species was shaped by a planet that spent 4 billion years trying to finish us off. And it never did. We are not strong. We are not fast. We do not have armor or claws or poison. What we have is that we did not quit. Not once. Not ever. Every other kind of human who ever lived died out except us. And we are still here. And we are here because we were too stubborn to lose." She looked at me. She said, "This place, Caressa 9, it is hard, but it is not new. My great-grandmother lived through famine and storm and sickness. My grandmother was born under bombs. My mother delivered me during a hurricane in a shelter under the ground. We have a long memory, Viles. A very long memory. And tonight, that memory is a useful thing to have." She went back to sharpening. I wrote it all down. I wrote down the gesture too, the collar gesture. I had seen her do it twice now, and I was beginning to understand it was not vanity and not habit and not nothing. It was a small ritual, a signal she gave to her own body, a way of saying I am still in command of myself. I do not get to fall apart yet. The people next to me are mine and I am still standing. I underlined it. I am Viles of the 3rd House. I was ranked 12th in tactical theory at the Coalition Joint Cadet Academy, and I had never failed a single test before this day, and I did not yet know that the most important lesson of my life was beginning. I only knew, sitting in the orange and purple dusk of a planet that wanted me dead, that a thin, quiet human girl who had barely spoken in 2 full terms of class had just become the most important person in my entire short life. The dark came down fully. Somewhere far away in the trees, something very large began to move. Hannah looked up. She watched the dark for a long moment. Then she reached up and very calmly, she adjusted her collar. The first night on Caressa 9 taught me the difference between knowing something and learning it. I had known, in theory, that a hostile world is dangerous. I had read the textbook entries. I had taken the simulations. I had answered the test questions correctly. I had even won a small prize in 2nd term for my paper on long-term cadet survival in unmapped environments. I had thought before that night that I understood the topic. I did not understand the topic. I learned the topic at the second hour after midnight, when the spore cloud came. Hannah saw it first. She always saw things first. She was sitting at the edge of our small camp, sharpening that same piece of metal, and she suddenly stood up. She did not run. She did not shout. She walked, fast and quiet, to where the Threx twins were keeping watch, and she said something to them I did not hear. They both turned and looked at the same patch of sky. There was a faint shimmer there, a pale silver mist coming low across the black grass, riding the wind. It was almost beautiful. In another life, on another world, I would have thought it was a kind of fog. Hannah turned back to camp. She said, "Everyone, get up, right now, no questions, move to the airlock of the shuttle, bring nothing, just yourselves, move." We moved. Some of us were still half asleep. Garn picked up Pym without asking and carried her. Ozzel was already at the airlock, holding it open. Hannah was counting heads as we went past her, her lips moving silently. She got to 45, then 46, then 47. 2 cadets were missing. She did not hesitate. She turned and ran back toward the far side of the camp, where the 2 had been sleeping, and she did not even look at the silver mist that was now rolling fast across the black grass toward her. I tried to go after her. Garn caught my shoulder with one large hand and held me back. He did not speak. He just held me. I understood. I would have only made it worse. We watched from the airlock as Hannah reached the 2 missing cadets. She shook them. They did not move. The mist was almost on her now. She shook them again. She stood up. She looked at the mist. She looked at us. She did not come back right away. She knelt down beside the 2 cadets, one of her hands on each of them, and she stayed there for maybe 3 breaths. Then she ran. She ran the way I have seen no other being run before or since. She was small and she was tired and her body was not built for speed, but she ran like the planet itself was a thing she could outrun if she just refused to lose. She came through the mist. She reached the airlock. Ozzel pulled her in. The door slammed shut behind her. She fell to her knees inside. She was breathing very hard. There was silver dust on her uniform and in her hair. She stayed on her knees for a long moment. Then she stood up. She said, "The airlock will filter the air. We are safe in here. Stay in here until I say so. The 2 cadets we lost. I will handle them in the morning." She walked to the back of the airlock. She sat down with her back against the wall. She closed her eyes. She did not cry. I watched her because I always watched her now, and I saw that she did not cry. But I also saw that her hands were shaking, just a little, just enough that I could tell she was holding them very still on purpose. After a while, Pym crawled across the floor and curled up against Hannah's side. Hannah opened her eyes and looked down at the small one and put one hand on Pym's head. She did not say anything. Pym did not say anything. That was the first night. In the morning, Hannah went out alone. She would not let anyone come with her. She buried the 2 cadets in the only way the planet allowed, which was quickly in shallow graves with stones placed on top so that nothing could come and take them. She came back 2 hours later. Her uniform was dirty. Her hands were dirty. Her face was very tired. She walked to the edge of camp. She stopped. She reached up. She adjusted her collar. Then she came back to us and she said, "Okay, we are not staying here. This place is open. The mist will come again. The big animals know where the wreck is now. We need to find a place we can defend and we need to find it today. Get ready. We move in 1 hour." We got ready. And so began the walk. I will not try to tell you about every step of the walk. I do not have the words and you do not have the time. I will tell you the things that mattered. The first thing was the river. We came to it on the second day and it was beautiful. It was wide and slow and the water looked clear and silver in the morning light. Several of the cadets ran toward it. They were thirsty. We were all thirsty. Our water rations were down to nearly nothing. Hannah caught the first cadet by the back of his uniform and pulled him backward. She caught the second by the arm. The third one she missed. He reached the bank. He bent down. He cupped his hands. She shouted, "Do not." He looked up. She said, "Do not put your hand in that water. Do not. Look at the bank. Tell me what you see." He looked at the bank. We all did. The bank was perfectly clean. Not a single plant. Not a single insect. Not a single bone. The black grass that grew everywhere else stopped exactly 2 paces from the water and did not cross. The whole long curve of the river was bordered by clean, dead earth. Hannah said water in a place like this should have life around it. Plants, bugs, tracks, anything. That water has nothing. That means the water itself is finishing everything that comes near it. Probably acid. Maybe something worse. Step back slowly. Do not touch anything. The cadet stepped back. His face was very pale, in the way his species got pale, which was almost green. Hannah picked up a small stone. She tossed it into the river. The stone hissed. The water around it turned faintly yellow. The stone dissolved before it sank. The cadet who had almost touched the water sat down hard on the ground. He put his face in his hands. Hannah walked over to him. She knelt down. She put her hand on his shoulder. She said, "Hey, you did not touch it. That is what matters. You looked, you started to make a mistake, and you stopped when I said stop. That is exactly what I need from all of you, not to be perfect. To stop when I say stop. Okay." He nodded. She stood up. She looked at the rest of us. She said, "New rule, Rule 4. Nobody touches anything. Nobody drinks anything. Nobody eats anything until I say it is safe. I will test things first. If I am sick after, you will know not to use it. If I am not sick after, then we use it. Understood?" We understood. She tested everything herself for the next 8 days. Every plant, every root, every pool of water that looked safer than the river. She would take a small bite or a small sip, and she would sit down with her back against a tree, and she would wait. She would wait an hour, sometimes 2. She would watch her own hands and her own breathing and her own skin. If nothing happened, she would nod, and then we could use it. Twice something did happen. The first time, a green leaf made her sick for half a day. She would not let anyone help her. She told us to keep walking. Garn refused and carried her, and she let him because she was too weak to argue. The second time, a pale fruit made her cough up blood for an hour. After that one, she sat very still for a long time. Then she said, "Okay, that fruit is bad. Write it down, Deadliest. Big bad fruit, pale color, smells sweet. Do not eat." I wrote it down. I wrote down everything. The second thing that mattered was the way she taught us. She did not just keep us alive. She taught us, every single day, how to keep ourselves alive without her. This was the part that frightened me the most because I understood what it meant. She was preparing us for a day when she would not be there. She taught the Threx twins how to read the patterns of bird sounds, so they could tell when a predator was near. She taught Garn how to test the ground with his weight before any of the smaller cadets crossed. She taught Ozzel how to count rations by the day rather than by the meal, so that we always knew how many days we had left. She taught Pim how to be quiet, and how to sit very still, and how to make herself small if a hunting animal came near. She taught me how to make a knife from a piece of stone. She showed me 3 times. She made me do it 5 times. She said, "If you can do this, you can always defend yourself. You will not always have a metal shard. You will not always have a weapon. But you will always have stones, and you will always have your hands, and you will always have your mind. The mind is the real weapon, Deadliest. Do not forget." I did not forget. I have not forgotten since. The third thing that mattered was the night she told me about the door. It was the 5th night. We had found a small place between 2 large rocks, a kind of natural shelter, and we had built our fire small and put it deep in the back where it could not be seen from the open ground. Most of the cadets were asleep. I was on watch with Hannah. She had taken to keeping me on her watch shift because, she said, I asked good questions, and good questions kept her awake. She was eating a small piece of root. She had tested it that morning. It was safe. It tasted, she said, like wet paper, but it was safe. I asked her, "Hannah, why do you go first? Every time, every test, every door, every animal, why is it always you?" She chewed for a long time. She swallowed. She said, "Deadliest, there is a story in my species, a very old story. Every human knows it. It comes in 1,000 different versions in every language, in every culture, in every time. The story goes like this. A small group of people are trapped somewhere terrible. Something is coming for them. They cannot all run. The strongest one of them stays at the door so that the others can get away. That one does not come back. The others live. The end. I waited. She said every human knows this story, Deadliest. We tell it to our children before they can walk. We put it in our songs. We put it in our books. We put it in our holy writings and our funny writings and our scary writings. We cannot stop telling it, because it is the only story we have ever needed. Everything else is just life. That story is the answer to life, when life turns into something you have to survive. She looked at the fire. She said somebody has to be at the door, Deadliest. Always. In every group of beings on every world that ever was. Somebody has to be at the door. And if you are the one who knows how, then you are the one who must. I said, but it should not always be you. She gave me the small, tired smile, the one that did not reach her eyes. She said, it is not always me, Deadliest. It is whoever can. Right now on this rock, on this planet, in this group, it is me. Tomorrow on a different rock, it might be you. It might be Garn. It might even be Pim when she is grown. The point is not that it is me. The point is that it is whoever it has to be. She finished the route. She stood up. She brushed the dirt off her uniform. She adjusted her collar. She said, get some sleep, Deadliest. Tomorrow we move again. There is a ridge to the north. I think the rescue beacon will work from up there. We just have to get to it. I tried to sleep. I could not. I lay on the cold ground between the two rocks, and I listened to the wind, and I thought about the story she had told me, and about the small ritual of the collar, and about a species so stubborn that it had outlived every other version of itself, and built a garden on top of the bones of its own past, and then sent a thin, quiet girl named Hannah Bell to a deadly planet to teach me what my own academy had not been willing to teach. Somewhere very far away, something enormous began to move. I did not sleep at all. On the morning of the 6th day, Hannah told us about the ridge. She gathered everyone around her in a half circle. Pim sat on a rock at the front, her 4 eyes wide. Garn stood behind her with his arms crossed. Ozzel was beside Hannah with his small notebook out, the one he had been using to track our supplies. The Threx twins were on the edges as always, watching the trees. Hannah unrolled a piece of cloth on the ground. She had drawn a map on it with a piece of burned wood. The map was rough, but it was clear. She pointed. She said, this is where we are. This is the ridge to the north. 4 days walking, maybe 5, depending on what is in our way. The ridge is the highest point on this part of the continent. The rescue beacon will only punch through the upper atmosphere from a height like that. From down here, the signal will not even leave the planet. She tapped the map in 3 places. She said, between us and the ridge, we have 3 problems. The first is a swamp. We have to go around it, not through it. Through it will end us. The second is a stretch of open ground, maybe 2 hours of walking with no cover at all. We will cross it at night. We will move in 2 groups with a gap between them so that if something hunts the first group, the second group has time to hide. The third problem is the climb itself. The ridge is steep. Some of you will struggle. Garn will help where he can. Pim, you are riding on his shoulders the whole way up. Do not argue. Pim opened a mouth to argue. Hannah said, do not argue. Pim closed the mouth. Hannah looked around at all of us. 45 now. We had lost 2 more in the days between the river and the rocks. One to a flower that had breathed out a sleeping dust before any of us understood what it was. One to a patch of ground that had turned out to not be ground at all, but the back of a single enormous animal that lived just under the surface. Hannah had pulled 3 other cadets off the back of that animal before it had finished going under. She had not been able to reach the 4th. She had buried that cadet too, alone, as always. And when she had come back, she had stood at the edge of camp and adjusted her collar, and I had written it down, and I had wished, very hard, that I could take some of the weight off her shoulders. Now she was telling us about the ridge. She said, here is the part nobody is going to like. I am going to walk ahead of the group. Not far, about 50 paces. Far enough that if I find something dangerous, I find it before it finds you. Close enough that you can still see me and I can still see you. I will not be doing this to be brave. I will be doing this because I have the most experience reading hostile ground, and that is what the situation requires. Ozzel will be at the front of the main group. He will keep you moving at a steady pace. The Threx twins will be at the sides. Garn will be at the back with Pym. Viles, you will be near the front, taking notes like always. I nodded. Ozzel said with respect, Hannah, if you are 50 paces ahead and something happens to you, we will not reach you in time. Hannah said that is correct. Ozzel said, then I object to the plan. Hannah said, your objection is noted. We are still doing it this way. Ozzel looked at her for a long moment. Then he closed his small notebook. He said, very well, but for the record, I want it written down that I objected. Hannah said, Viles, write it down. Cadet Ozzel objected to the lead position arrangement. He is correct that it is risky. He is overruled because the alternative is riskier. End of note. I wrote it down. We moved out. The first day of the walk was the easiest. We went around the swamp the way she had said. The swamp smelled wrong, like meat that had been in the sun too long, and there were small things moving in the water that I did not want to look at too closely. We kept walking. The black grass thinned out as we left the lowlands. The ground became rocky and pale. A new kind of plant began to appear, low and round, with thick leaves that closed up when we walked past. Hannah tested one of the leaves at our first rest stop. She chewed a small piece. She waited an hour, then she nodded. She said the leaves are safe. Bitter but safe. Eat them if you are hungry. Drink water from the small pools we passed, but only the ones with insects on top. If insects can live in the water, we can drink it. If the water is empty, we cannot. We ate the leaves. They were bitter. They were also the first food I had truly chewed since the crash, and I was so grateful I almost cried. The second day was harder. We had to cross the open ground. Hannah had us wait until the second sun set, and then she had us walk in two groups with a gap of about 50 paces between us, just like she had said. I was in the first group. Hannah was ahead of us in the lead position. Ozzel was beside me. Garn and Pym and most of the smaller cadets were in the second group behind us. We were maybe halfway across the open ground when Hannah stopped. She did not say anything. She did not turn around. She just stopped very still and held up one hand. We froze. In the second group, Garn saw her hand and stopped his group too. Everyone went very still. The wind moved across the open ground. The two suns were almost down. The light was thin and sideways. I could not see what Hannah was seeing. Then I could. There was a shape in the rocks ahead of her, a long, low shape. It was the same color as the rocks, and it was so still that my eyes had not picked it out at first. It was the size of 3 garns put together. It had a long tail. It had a head that was mostly mouth. It had not seen us yet. It was looking the wrong way. Hannah lowered her raised hand very slowly. She turned her head just enough to see us. She made a small gesture with her other hand. The gesture meant back up, slowly, no sound. We backed up slowly, no sound. The second group did the same. We moved in a long curve around the rocks. It took us 2 extra hours. We did not speak the whole time. Hannah did not let us speak until we were in a small dry creek bed half a kilometer away, with the open ground far behind us. When she finally said we could speak, nobody did. Nobody had anything to say. We just sat down in the creek bed and breathed. Hannah came over to me. She sat down beside me. She did not look at me. She looked at the sky. She said that one was a quiet hunter. They sit in one place for days. They wait. They do not move until something walks within reach. If we had kept going, the first group would have walked right past it, and it would have taken 3 of us before any of us understood what was happening. I asked, how did you know? She said the rocks were the wrong shape. There was a rock in the middle of them that was not a rock. The light was wrong on it. The shadow was wrong on it. I have been watching for the wrong light for 6 days. I almost missed it. I would have missed it if the second sun had already gone down. She finally looked at me. She said, Viles, I want to tell you something. I want you to write it down, and I want you to remember it even after this is over. I took out my notebook. She said the most dangerous thing on any world is the thing that does not move. Predators that move you can see. Predators that hide you can find. But the thing that sits perfectly still and waits, the thing that has nothing but time, that is the thing that ends groups like ours. Watch for stillness, V-less. Watch for the wrong light. Watch for the rock that is not a rock. I wrote it down. She stood up. She adjusted her collar. She said, "Get some rest, all of you. We have been moving for 15 hours. We will move again at first light. The ridge is 2 more days. We can do this. We are doing this." Oswald came over to her while the rest of us were settling. I could not hear what he said. I saw Hannah listen and then nod and then put her hand briefly on his shoulder. Whatever he had said, she had accepted it. He went back to his place. Later, when I was on watch with her again, I asked her what Oswald had said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said he apologized for arguing about the lead position. He said he had been thinking about it, and he had realized that I was right, and that my plan had just kept the second group safe, and that if I had not been ahead of the rest of you, the quiet hunter would have ended at least 3 cadets before anyone understood the threat. He apologized. I asked, "What did you say?" She said, "I told him he had nothing to apologize for. I told him that asking the hard question was the right thing to do, even if my answer turned out to be the right one. I told him that I would rather lead a group that questions me than a group that follows me without thinking. The second kind of group dies, V-less. The first kind of group lives." I wrote that down too. The third day of the walk, we came to the climb. The ridge rose up out of the land like a wall. It was not a single sharp cliff. It was a long slope of broken stone, full of cracks and ledges and places where a small thing could climb and a large thing could not. Hannah looked up at it for a long time. She said, "This is good. The big animals will not come up here. The slope is too steep for them. The little animals we can handle. We climb in a line with the strongest in front and the strongest in back and the smallest in the middle. Garn, you carry Pim. Tie her to your shoulders if you have to. We are not losing her on the climb." Garn nodded. Pim climbed onto his back without arguing. We started up. The climb took 2 days. 2 days of slow, careful work, of holding onto stone with claws or fingers or whatever each species had, of helping each other up the harder ledges, of resting on small, flat places where we could fit. At one point, the Gravity World cadet next to Garn slipped, and Hannah caught his arm with her one good hand and held him against the slope until 2 other cadets could pull him back up. Her shoulder made a sound when she did this. She did not say anything about it. But that night, when she thought nobody was looking, I saw her press her hand against her shoulder and close her eyes for a long moment. She had been hurt for days now. She had not told us how badly. I knew because I watched her, and because her left hand had been moving more slowly each day, and because she had been favoring her right side when she walked, and because she sometimes stopped in the middle of a sentence and breathed for a moment before she continued. I did not say anything to her about it. I would not have known what to say. On the second day of the climb, we reached the top of the ridge. The top was a long, flat place, open to the sky. The wind was strong up there. The 2 suns were both visible at the same time for the first time in days, one rising and one setting, and the light made everything golden and purple at once. Below us, the planet stretched away in every direction, dark and hostile and beautiful in its terrible way. Hannah set the rescue beacon down on the flat stone. She knelt beside it. She began to assemble it. I watched her work. Her hands were shaking a little. She was very tired. Her face was pale, in the way humans get pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes that had not been there a week ago. The beacon clicked into place. She reached for the activation switch. And on the slope above us, where there should not have been any slope at all, where we had thought we were already at the top, something stepped out of the rocks. I will try to describe what came down off the higher slope, but please understand that I have written this part of my notes 6 different times, and I have not been satisfied with any of them. It was tall, taller than Garn, taller than the wreckage of our shuttle. It had 4 limbs that I could clearly identify, and 2 more that might have been arms or might have been something else. Its head was long and narrow and had something like a face on it, but the face was wrong, in the way the quiet hunter's rock had been wrong. The eyes, if they were eyes, did not blink. It moved slowly. It did not need to move quickly. The way it moved said, very clearly, that nothing on this planet had ever made it move quickly in its entire long life. It came down the slope. It stopped about 30 paces from us. It looked at the beacon. Then it looked at Hannah. Hannah stood up slowly. She did not raise a weapon. She did not run. She did not even step back. She simply stood between us and the thing, and she breathed very evenly, and she watched it. I was still kneeling at the beacon. My hands were on the activation switch. I had not flipped it yet. I did not know if I should. I did not know if any sudden movement would make the thing on the slope decide to stop being still. Hannah said without turning V-less. I said yes. She said finish the beacon. Right now, do it slowly, do it carefully, do not stop no matter what you hear. I said Hannah. She said finish the beacon, Cadet. That is the order. I flipped the switch. The beacon began to hum. A pale light began to grow on its small dome. It would take a few minutes to power up enough to send the signal. A few minutes was a long time, when something tall and wrong was standing 30 paces away and looking at the only person between it and us. Hannah took one slow step forward. Behind me, I heard Pim begin to cry, very quietly. I heard Garn put his big hand over Pim's mouth, gently, to keep her quiet. I heard Oswald whispering something that sounded like a prayer in his own language. I heard the Threx twins both breathing in the same rhythm, the way they did when they were frightened. Hannah took another step forward. She said hello. She said it in standard coalition speech. The thing on the slope did not respond. It did not move. It only watched. Hannah said, I am called Hannah. I am from a planet far from here. We did not mean to come to your world. Our ship was broken. We landed by mistake. We are trying to leave. The thing on the slope did not move. Hannah took another step forward. She was about 20 paces from it now. She was the only thing standing between it and 44 cadets and one little Pim and one humming beacon. She said, we have lost some of our friends here. We do not want to lose any more. We are leaving. If you let us leave, we will not come back. If you let us leave, no one will come back. I will tell them not to come back. I will tell them this is your world and we made a mistake by being here and we are sorry. The thing on the slope tilted its long, narrow head. It made a sound. The sound was not a word. It was not a roar. It was something deeper. It was a sound that traveled through my chest before it reached my ears. It was a sound I felt in my teeth. Hannah did not flinch. She made a sound back. I do not know how she did it. Her throat made a sound that should not have been possible for a human. It was lower than her speaking voice. It was rhythmic. It went on for several seconds. When she stopped, the thing on the slope tilted its head the other way and made another sound back to her, and they stood there, the small human and the tall, wrong creature, and they made sounds at each other. I do not know what they said. I will never know. I have asked her more than once in the years that have passed since, and she has only ever shaken her head and said, V-less. Some things stay between two beings who shared a difficult moment. That is one of them. What I can tell you is this. They made sounds at each other for a long time. I do not know how long. The beacon finished powering up while they were doing it. The signal punched through the upper atmosphere and reached the orbital network. Somewhere above us, very far away, a coalition rescue ship registered an emergency tone and began to burn hard toward our position. Hannah and the thing on the slope went on with their sounds. At one point, Hannah took something off her wrist. A small, thin band she had been wearing under her uniform sleeve. I had not even known it was there. She held it out slowly on her flat palm. The thing on the slope leaned forward just a little. It looked at the band. It made a softer sound. Hannah set the band down on a flat stone between them. She stepped back. The thing on the slope came forward slowly and picked up the band with one of the limbs that might have been an arm. It studied the band. It made another sound, this one almost gentle. Hannah said in standard speech, "Now you can keep it. It belonged to my mother. She would want you to have it." The thing on the slope stayed very still for a moment. Then it made one more sound, a short one, and it turned and it walked slowly back up the higher slope, and it was gone among the rocks before any of us understood that it was leaving. Hannah did not move for a long time. I said, "Hannah." She said, "Just give me a minute, Vilas." I gave her a minute. After the minute, she turned around. Her face was wet. She had been crying without sound. She wiped her face on her sleeve. She walked back to us. She knelt down in front of Pim, who was still sitting on Garn's shoulders. She said, "Hey, kiddo, we did it. Help is coming. We are going home." Pim grabbed Hannah with all four of her small arms and held on, and Hannah held her back. And for a moment the rest of us stood in a circle around them and did not say anything at all. The coalition rescue ships came down through the upper atmosphere 10 minutes later. 3 of them, heavy dropships with full medical teams and full security teams and full equipment. They landed on the flat top of the ridge in a roar of engines and a wave of hot wind. Soldiers came out, weapons raised, looking for a fight. There was no fight. There were 45 cadets standing very still in a circle around a thin, tired human girl who was holding a 12-cycle-old child. The medical officer took one look at us and lowered his weapon and called for stretchers. Hannah did not let go of Pim. She stood up with Pim in her arms and she walked toward the lead medical officer, and she said, in a voice that was suddenly very calm and very practiced, "My name is Cadet Hannah Bell. I am from Earth. I am the senior surviving officer of Cadet Shuttle 1137, which was misdropped P'd to Caressa 9 due to a coordinate error 6 standard days ago. We left the academy with 50 cadets. I am bringing back 45. I am ready to give a full report whenever you are ready to take it." The medical officer stared at her. He said, "You are bringing back 45 cadets from Caressa 9. Hannah said, "Yes." He said, "Alive?" Hannah said, "Yes." He said, "That has never happened before. The previous record for survivors from this planet is 0. Hannah said, "I am aware of the previous record, sir. I would like to please get my cadets onto the ship now. They have been through a great deal." He nodded. He turned and shouted orders. The other medical officers came forward with stretchers. They began checking each of us. Pim was checked first, on Hannah's quiet insistence. Hannah refused to be checked until every other cadet had been checked first. She stood at the door of the lead dropship with her hand on the frame and her other hand on Pim's small shoulder, and she watched every single one of us go through the door before she would step in herself. When she finally did step in, she stopped at the threshold. She turned around. She looked at the planet. The 2 suns were both setting now in their opposite directions, and the wind was moving across the top of the ridge, and below us the dark land rolled away forever. She reached up very calmly, and she adjusted her collar. Then she stepped onto the dropship. The door closed behind her. The engines lifted us off the ridge, and away from the planet and up through the high clouds, and out into the cold silver dark of space. I sat by a window. I watched Caressa 9 grow smaller behind us. I watched the great curve of its dark land disappear under the black and the stars. I thought about the thing on the slope. I thought about the small, thin band Hannah had left behind. I thought about a species that had, somehow, sent one quiet girl down to a deadly world and brought 45 other beings back home with her, against every chance and every record. I took out my notebook. I wrote on the last clean page, the only sentence I could think of. I wrote, "Today I learned what humans are." The hearing was held 3 weeks after our return. By then, all of us had been examined, treated, and questioned. Most of us had been moved to a quiet recovery wing on the academy station. We had been given clean uniforms. We had been given food we did not have to test first. We had been allowed to sleep in real beds, in rooms with locked doors, in a place where nothing came out of the dark to hunt us. I had slept badly anyway. I think most of us had. The body learns survival in places like Caressa 9, and the body does not unlearn it just because someone tells it to. Hannah was kept in a separate medical wing. Her injuries had been worse than any of us had known. Her left shoulder had been partly torn from the slip during the climb. Her ribs had 2 cracks. There were 3 places on her body where the planet had left marks that the doctors would only call quietly in low voices, complicated. She had not told anyone she was hurt. Not once. Not in the whole walk. When I finally was allowed to visit her, on the 11th day, she was sitting up in her medical bed reading a book. A real paper book. I had not seen one in years. I asked her what it was. She showed me the cover. It was a book of old human poetry. She said her grandmother had given it to her when she had been Pim's age, and she kept a copy with her at the academy because reading it before sleep helped her dream of home. I sat with her for an hour. She asked about the others. I told her everyone was healing. I told her Pim asked about her every single day. She smiled at that. She said, "Tell Pim I will see her at the hearing." I said, "You should not have to go to the hearing, after everything you did." Hannah said, "I do have to go. They have charged me with insubordination. Specifically, with overriding Cadet Commander Azul during the surface mission. The chain of command was breached, and the Academy is required to investigate any breach of the chain of command, no matter the result." I said, "That is ridiculous." Hannah said, "No, V-less. It is not ridiculous. The chain of command exists for a reason. If they let me go without a hearing, then any other cadet in any other future situation could decide to override their commander on a whim and use my case as an excuse. The hearing has to happen. The rules have to be examined. Then the rules can be applied or changed or upheld. That is how a fair system works." I said, "Do you think they will punish you?" Hannah said, "I do not know, I hope not, but I am ready either way." I said, "What does that mean?" Hannah said, "It means that if they punish me, I will accept it. And if they do not, I will use the hearing to ask them to change the way they teach cadets, so that the next time something like this happens, it does not have to be one human girl on a deadly planet. It can be any cadet of any species who is ready." She looked at me. She said, "I would like you to come to the hearing, V-less. I would like you to bring your notes, all of them." I said, "All of them." She said, "All of them." The hearing was held in the main academy chamber, which was the largest room on the station. It had a high curved ceiling and rows of seats that rose up in tiers around a small central floor. The judges sat at a long bench at the front. There were 5 of them, from 5 different species, including one Vienan elder whose hatch wall was higher than mine. The chamber was full. Every cadet who had been on Caressa 9 was there, all 45 of us. Pim in the front row, sitting very straight, her 4 eyes fixed on the bench. Garn behind her, his arms crossed, a quiet stone wall. Azul beside me, his small notebook in his hands, the same notebook he had used on the planet to track our supplies. The Threx twins, the Korash sisters. Every single one of us, in our clean uniforms, in our healed bodies, in our terrible bright awareness that we were alive, and that one quiet human was the reason. Hannah walked in. She was still moving slowly. Her left shoulder was wrapped under her uniform. She walked to the small floor in the center of the chamber. She stopped. She faced the bench. The lead judge said, "Cadet Hannah Bell, please state your name and species for the record." Hannah said, "Hannah Bell, Human Earth." The judge said, "You are charged with 1 count of insubordination during a Coalition Academy training mission, specifically during the survival event on Caressa 9. You are accused of overriding Cadet Commander Azul of the Viren species and assuming command of the surviving cadets without proper authorization. Do you understand the charges?" Hannah said, "I do." The judge said, "Do you wish to defend yourself?" Hannah was quiet for a long moment. The whole chamber was quiet with her. Then she said, "No, Your Honor." A small wave of murmurs went through the rows. The judge raised one hand for silence. The chamber went quiet again. The judge said, "Cadet Bell, you are not entering a defense." Hannah said, "No, Your Honor, I am not. I do not wish to defend myself. I am willing to accept any punishment the panel feels is right. What I would like to do, with the panel's permission, is to defend the others, the 44 cadets who came back with me. Their conduct on Caressa 9 was, in my opinion, the best conduct of any group of young beings I have ever served with. I would like to ask that their service on the planet be officially recognized, regardless of what happens to me. The judge looked down at her papers. She said, Cadet Bell, the 44 other cadets are not on trial here. You are. Hannah said, with respect, Your Honor, I know, but they should be the focus of this hearing, not me. They are the proof that what we did down there was correct. If the panel wants to see whether the chain of command was broken in a way that harmed the mission, the panel should look at the result of the mission. The result is 45 returning cadets from a planet that has never returned a single one. The chamber was silent. Hannah said, I would like, with the panel's permission, to call witnesses. The judge said, Very well, call your first witness. Hannah said, I call V. of the third house. I stood up. I walked down to the small floor. I stood beside Hannah. I did not look at her. I looked at the bench. I held my notebook in my hands. I had brought it, all of it. The judge said, Cadet V. Please state for the record what you observed of Cadet Bell's conduct on Caressa 9. I opened my notebook. I read. I read for a long time. I read about the moment she had stepped between us and the first creature, the one with the 6 legs and the heat pits, and how she had ended it with a piece of shuttle plating in 2 seconds flat. I read about the spore cloud, and how she had gone back for the 2 cadets we had lost, and how she had buried them alone. I read about the river that had been acid, and the rule of stop when I say stop, and the 8 days she had tested every plant and every water with her own body before any of us had touched it. I read about the quiet hunter in the rocks, and the rule of the wrong light. I read about the climb, and the way she had caught the Gravity World cadet with a shoulder that had already been hurt, and not told any of us. I read about the thing on the slope, and the sound she had made at it that no human throat should have been able to make, and the small band she had left behind on the flat stone. I read for almost an hour. The chamber was completely silent the whole time. When I finished, I closed the notebook. I said, Your Honors, Cadet Bell did not break the chain of command on Caressa 9. Cadet Bell became the chain of command because the chain that had been assigned to us was not equipped for the situation. Cadet Ozzel has stated in writing in his own report that he asked her to take command and that she accepted only after his request. Cadet Bell ran no mission for her own credit. She put herself first into every danger we faced. She tested every food and every water with her own body. She walked ahead of the group on every dangerous stretch of ground. She climbed last on every cliff so that any of us who fell would land on her instead of on the rocks. And she stood on the ridge, alone, in front of a creature none of us could even describe, while my hands powered up the rescue beacon, and she spoke to that creature in sounds I cannot reproduce, and she gave away her own mother's bracelet so that we could leave that planet alive. I looked at the bench. I said Cadet Bell did not break the chain of command. Cadet Bell honored it. The chain of command exists to keep beings alive. That is its only purpose. Cadet Bell used the chain of command for its purpose, and as a result, 45 of us are standing here today instead of 0. If this panel finds that to be insubordination, then the panel will need to also find that the rules of insubordination are written wrong and need to be rewritten. I stepped back. I sat down. The lead judge looked at her colleagues. They looked back at her. Then the judge said the panel will hear additional witnesses. Cadet Ozul of the Viren species, please come forward. Ozul stood up. He walked down to the floor. He stopped beside Hannah. He turned to the bench. He said, Your Honors, I am the cadet who was overridden. I am the one whose authority was taken. If anyone in this chamber has a complaint to make about Cadet Bell, it should be me. I have no complaint. I asked her to take command. I asked her in front of witnesses. I am alive because she took it. 44 other cadets are alive because she took it. I have, since our return, applied for transfer to her future command should she ever be given one. I would like that application read into the record of this hearing. The judge said, It is so noted. The judge said, Are there other cadets who wish to speak? 43 other cadets stood up. The judge looked at the rows of standing cadets. She looked at the rows for a long time. Then she said, "The panel understands. You may all sit. The point is taken." We sat. The judge said, "Cadet Bell, the panel will retire to consider the case. You will remain available for the panel's decision." Hannah said, "Yes, Your Honor." The judges left through a small door behind the bench. The chamber stayed quiet. Hannah stayed standing in the small central floor. Pim in the front row kept her 4 eyes fixed on Hannah. Hannah looked back at Pim and gave her a small smile, and Pim straightened up even more, like a small soldier on parade. We waited. We waited for almost 2 hours. When the judges came back, they walked very slowly. They sat down. The lead judge folded her hands. She said, "Cadet Bell, the panel has reached its decision." Hannah said, "Yes, Your Honor." The judge said, "The charges of insubordination are dismissed. The panel finds that the chain of command was, in this case, properly transferred according to the spirit of cadet conduct rules, even if not according to the letter. The panel further finds that Cadet Bell's conduct on Caressa 9 constitutes one of the finest examples of leadership in the recorded history of the Coalition Academy." The chamber, which had been quiet, began to fill with sound. Soft sounds, sounds of relief, sounds that ran through 45 different throats in 22 different shapes and meant the same thing in every language. The judge raised her hand for quiet. The chamber became quiet again. The judge said, "Cadet Bell, the panel has further decisions to make. Are you prepared to hear them?" Hannah said, "Yes, Your Honor." The judge said, "First, the panel orders an immediate review of the human species classification. The current rating of Tier 2, with restriction to observer roles, is found to be based on a misreading of the species history. A revised rating will be issued within the next 6 months, and human cadets will, from the date of that rating, be permitted to apply for any role within the Coalition fleet." Hannah said, "Thank you, Your Honor." The judge said, "Second, the panel orders the Academy curriculum to be revised. A new course of instruction will be created called Survival Leadership Across Species, and the case study of Caressa 9 will be its central text. Cadet Bell, the panel requests that you, when you are fully recovered, work with the Academy to develop this course. Not as a teacher, as a consultant. The course will be taught by your peers. Your role will be to ensure they teach it correctly." Hannah said, "I would be honored, Your Honor." The judge said, "Third, the panel orders that Cadet Bell be promoted to the rank of Cadet Captain, effective immediately, with the right to choose her first command from any available frigate in the Academy training fleet." Hannah said, "Thank you, Your Honor." The judge said, "Fourth and finally, the panel notes for the record that the cadets of Caressa 9, all 45 of them, have asked, in a unanimous joint statement filed with this panel, to serve under Cadet Captain Bell for their first deployment as commissioned officers. The panel finds this request reasonable and orders it to be honored when the time comes, on a frigate to be named at the cadets' request." The judge looked down at her papers. She said, "The cadets have submitted a name for the frigate. The panel approves the name. The frigate will be called the Bell's Door." Hannah was very still. She said very quietly, "Your Honor, with respect, that is too much honor." The judge said, "Cadet Bell, the panel has considered the proposed name carefully. The name is not for you alone. The name is for what you did. The name is for the door that you stood at on a ridge on a deadly world while 44 other cadets powered up a beacon behind you. The name is for the gesture you taught all of them by standing there. That gesture, the panel has been informed, has already begun to be used by your fellow cadets when they face difficult moments. They reach up. They adjust their collars. The panel finds this gesture to be a worthy thing to honor, and the door to be a worthy thing to remember." Hannah closed her eyes for a moment. She opened them. She said, "Thank you, Your Honor." The judge said, "The hearing is adjourned." The chamber stood up. The chamber began to applaud in 22 different ways, in 22 different rhythms, and the sound was the sound of an entire Coalition Academy understanding, all at once, that a small human girl had taught it something it had not known it needed to learn. Hannah turned around. Pim was already running. Hannah caught her with her good arm and lifted her up and held her, and Pim wrapped all 4 small arms around Hannah's neck, and Hannah closed her eyes, and for a moment there was no chamber and no panel and no coalition. There was only a thin, tired girl from Earth and a small 4-eyed child from a planet I did not know, and the long, quiet weight of every step of the walk we had all taken together. Then Hannah set Pim down. She turned to the rest of us. She reached up. Very calmly, with Pim still holding her hand, she adjusted her collar. I am V-less of the 3rd house. I am writing this final entry from the bridge of the Coalition frigate Bell's door. I am the senior science officer. Captain Hannah Bell is in her chair to my left. Pim, who is now an officer cadet of 15 cycles and the youngest serving member of any Coalition vessel, is at the navigation station. Garn is at the security station. Azul is at logistics, where he was always meant to be. The Threx twins watch the side scopes. The Korash sisters run the engineering deck. We have a tradition aboard this ship. We did not invent it. We brought it back with us from a deadly planet, and we have kept it ever since. When something difficult is about to happen, when the airlock is opening onto the unknown, when a hostile ship comes onto our scopes, when the dropship is about to enter atmosphere, when a child is frightened, when a friend is hurt, when a stranger needs our help, we reach up. We adjust our collars. It is the smallest gesture in the catalog of the Coalition. It takes less than a second. It costs nothing. It means I am still here. I am still in command of myself. I am still going. The people next to me are mine and I am theirs, and we are going to walk out of this together, or I am going to be the one at the door. It is a human gesture. It belongs to all of us now. This is the end of my notes. I have written everything I saw and everything I learned and everything I think the next cadet should know. If you are reading this and you are about to go into something difficult and you are not sure you are ready, I have one last thing to tell you. You are ready. You have always been ready. Reach up. Adjust your collar. Walk through the door.